Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and today I'm breaking down the second episode of What If Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes. This episode is a lot sadder than you think it is. Maybe I was expecting a mean Quill or a happy Hank Pym, but there's so many callouts, Easter eggs to past MCU events and people, so let's just jump into it because I want to talk about all the crazy things that happened in this episode. But first, we have some What If inspired merch over at nerdriot.shop. We have Echo gear, Loki gear, and Christmas for January gear because I think it's a little too late to order it before the end of Christmas. It's a great way to support the channel, but also look fresh as hell while doing it. Okay, let's jump into this. We open this episode with a giant ball of light shooting through the sky directly towards Earth. Peggy Carter demands that the unauthorized ship must be shut down. They can't reach the USS base. The song playing as love affair is out of control. We're then taken to the ground. It's 1988 if you couldn't tell by the people's 80s fashion. Look at all those clothes. We're in New York. We're outside a jazz club. I think that says Johnny Chords and Howard's. Might be a call out to Howard Stark. This license plate on the card just reminds us, yes, we're in a different universe where they have posters in English, but they also have license plates in Alien. There's a billboard for Olympia, which could be a tie-in to Eternals, whose home on Earth on the comics was Olympia. It looks like it could also be Kingo's original look from the comics on it. Since this takes place in 88, what else happened in 88 in the MCU? Well, during the events of this episode in our reality, Nick Fury's at S.H.I.E.L.D., Carol's with the Rambos, Hank's working with S.H.I.E.L.D. with Bill Foster and Elias Starr. This is the year Starr leaves to work on his own. Then, his daughter becomes Ghost in a horrible accident. The Kree scientist Mar-Vell is currently posing as Wendy Lawson and joins Project Pegasus, which we're currently seeing. She just dies next year. I have a lot of those morbid facts, and I'm sorry at the way that I announced them. The ship blasts down on a New York street, smashing into cars. It's Ego's ship from the second Guardians movie, the one where he and Mantis traveled in. The egg ship stops in front of the New York City Hall, sliding into a crash halt. The NYPD arrives, very confused and not saving the day. Out steps our young Peter Quill, backlit by the bright light of Ego's ship. Our Star-Lord is wearing the same shirt, the same getup he wore when his mother died in the first Guardians movie, the red flannel and his river rafter canoe shirt that later we see his girlfriend in, and crazy to me. Was it not crazy to anybody else that she could fit into a child's t-shirt? Couldn't be me. Behind the police officer, Watu blends into the building standing as a shadow and begins narrating.
Not just any kid, but Peter Quill.
Yes, and it's our baby boy Quill out on a joyride. I don't like how menacing the Watcher is with telling Quill's story, like he doesn't know he's trying to get away from his egotistic father. Like what I did there? Egotistic, ego, two heads, same coin. I think that's the quote. Baby Quill picks up the cop's car and makes them explode. In the second movie, when he started getting riled up with his newfound powers, he was able to make the rocks move and whip around him like a tornado, even drawing them to his body to make Pac-Man. We didn't see him use telekinesis, but it's not surprising he'd know how to do it if he actually trained with his father. We see the same clip from the first movie of our baby Quill running away from his grandfather after his mother died. But I also really like that we're exploring what if Yondu was a bad guy and just gave him to Ego. Like, it's a horrible idea, but it's questions that I wanted answered. Our baby Quill stares out the window at the solar system and as Yondu Grinch smiles in the reflection. We see Yondu still with Taserface in this universe. What a pair. Then he delivers Peter to Ego, who destroys his mom's Walkman and then turns it into an electro ball. He broke it in the second movie as well because he's just a dick. Then we go over the same plan of execution story that Ego revealed in the second Guardians movie about the expansion, where he plants his own little seeds all over the world and takes it over, like men always do. Peter's causing havoc at the Brooklyn Bridge, literally destroying everything. When adult Peter was being imbued with Ego's powers, his eyes turned like a light blue, but it didn't illuminate like it did right here. It did illuminate purple in the first movie when he was wielding the orb though. We're taken to Project Pegasus, S.H.I.E.L.D. Western Division headquarters. Pegasus stands for Potential, Energy, Group, Alternate Sources, United States. When Howard Stark was looking for Steve Rogers, he discovered the Tesseract. They began studying it and created Pegasus, and this newfound organization was created to study the Tesseract, which included S.H.I.E.L.D., NASA, and the US government. As I said earlier, Mar-Vell worked here in the 80s as the project leader under the name Wendy Lawson, but when she died in 89, the project was kind of closed. Pegasus opened up again not too long after, but once Thor took the Tesseract back to Asgard, they shut it back down. It turns out baby Quill has been out destroying dozens of solar systems consumed by a wave of radiation. We know now that was Ego and baby Quill was lighting the fuse, if you will. It only takes 24 hours within his time of being on those planets to actually destroy it, and that's terrifying. We're with Howard Stark, voiced by John Slattery, and Peggy Carter, voiced by Haley Atwell, both returning from their roles as the same characters in the movies and TV shows. I love when they do this. Howard mentions how Tony is a pain in the ass, and Peggy retorts he has spunk. It's almost like Peggy saw Tony's hologram performance at the Stark Foundation. Tony during this time was 18 years old, and in 3 years his parents are going to die. That came out much worse than I wanted it to, but I just have to remind y'all because it's a breakdown, timeline order, what was happening in our universe. But maybe, since it's a different universe, he won't die. Well, maybe they don't die, or at least by Bucky. I hope it's not like a canon event. Ooh. Peggy becomes our Nick Fury and begins cooking up the best team the world's ever seen. You see a map with the coordinates of their location. The farthest is Bucky, currently in Russia. Next is Prince T'Chaka in Wakanda. Hank Pym and Goliath are both, I think, in San Francisco. And the middle dot might be for Lawson, who's already at Pegasus in the Mojave Desert. Howard Stark says this.
You forgetting we're in the middle of a Cold War? All that We Are the World garbage doesn't really play outside of MTV.
So, like, remember during the 80s, the Cold War went to like 89? This is an ongoing war between the US and the Soviet Union and their allies after World War II. This was especially not the time in America when they wanted to work with Russia, so hiring Bucky, a literal sleeper agent, just wasn't ideal in Howard's opinion. He also references MTV as the only diverse thing in media and life right now, and that's sad. It's the 80s. Do you know how many black bands there were? We cut to my favorite Ant-Man, Hank Pym. I'm joking. You know Paul Rudd is my favorite Ant-Man. I don't think there's a person that will say that Hank Pym is their favorite Ant-Man. Played by Michael Douglas, and with his daughter Hope voiced by Madeline McGraw. He's clearly having a hard time raising Hope after Janet disappeared. Janet sacrificed herself to stop a Soviet missile from hitting the US literally a year ago from the time they're currently in 1987. So it's only been a year since Janet's been gone. Hope mentions in Ant-Man and the Wasp how she was only 7 years old when her mom left and her dad didn't talk to her for 2 weeks. He was grieving, but so was she, so their dynamic is still growing, stretching, ever-changing. Hank's phone rings, it's Howard, he hangs up in his face. We don't officially actually know why Hank hates Howard. Personally, Janet and Hank were working with S.H.I.E.L.D. when Janet died. I could see Hank blaming Howard for that, as he was one of the main folks at S.H.I.E.L.D. during the time. In Ant-Man, we see a flashback to 89. Howard and Peggy are working with Pym until Hank goes off on Howard for attempting to replicate and steal his Pym tech. Ant-Man says this in Civil War.
Hank Pym always said you never can trust a Stark.
So I just think it's a long battle of them Starks being Starks, and clearly Pym is occasionally a team player. Hank and Hope enter Pegasus, and Hank makes it a point to say he doesn't work here anymore. Though we saw him quit in 89, he must have quit a little bit sooner in this universe. We run into Goliath, voiced by Lawrence Fishburne, another actor who played their character in the MCU. They're on a roll in this episode. Now, our Bill Foster worked with Hank on Project Goliath. We later see him finding and taking care of Ava Starr, aka Ghost, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Project Goliath was a study Foster had with Pym on expanding their body mass with Pym particles. He did grow to be 21 feet, while Pym could only get really, really small.
Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. You can love holiday season and also admit that it's stressful. Travel, time with family, marking time with New Year's, it can be a lot. And if you feel like you could use a little help with it all, try connecting with a licensed therapist by using BetterHelp. Starting therapy can be hard. The right therapist for you may not be in your area, and some people struggle with the face-to-face interaction of therapy. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy sessions as a phone call, as a video chat, even via messaging if you prefer that, whatever is the most comfortable version of therapy for you. Just click the link in the description and answer a few questions about what you're looking for from therapy and what your preferences are. BetterHelp will then match you with a therapist from their network that's right for you. If you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a therapist for no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. If you think that you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/newrockstars. Clicking that link helps support this channel and also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so that you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you.
This suit is a perfect mix of Goliath in the comics. The bars across the chest and the colors are similar in both costumes. I also believe that Project Goliath was around the 80s, and I never realized how many teams Hank Pym was a part of, and just out of irritation or fighting with his coworkers left, stormed out, was like, I hate this place. Then we're introduced to King T'Chaka, voiced by Atanda Wakani, who played young T'Chaka in the first Black Panther movie. He's wearing the same exact outfit during the flashback scene, but the claws around his neck are gold, not silver. We don't know T'Challa's age, but I think Killmonger is slightly older, if not around the same age. Killmonger's dad died in 92 when he looked like 8 or 9, so I don't think T'Challa was really even thought about right now, or if he was alive, he definitely had a babysitter. Peggy mentions how Wakanda doesn't normally join in global affairs, and it's because no one knows they exist yet. They gotta keep it a secret. Then Howard says this.
It's a pleasure. Your father was a great ally to us during the war.
Yes, I understand you even donated some vibranium to your efforts.
We made a shield out of it. Lost it in the Arctic, but other than that...
T'Chaka and N'Jobu's father was Azuri, who in the comics fought Hydra with Captain America, and I think that's what Howard is alluding to here. This was in Captain America Black Panther Flags of Our Fathers, released in 2010. We also learned how Howard officially got vibranium to make Cap's shield, and it was indeed a gift from King T'Chaka. Yay! I didn't know, so I like this. Then this happens.
Hey, how'd the commies snag an invite?
Gorbachev wanted the target contained before he reaches Moscow, so he sent the Winter Soldier.
So Bucky wasn't going to be on the team. It's only during this conflict the Soviet Union president, Gorbachev, wanted to make sure the baby Quill is fully captured before getting anywhere close to Moscow. So they sent Bucky, voiced by Sebastian Stan, and we got another one. It's great seeing the team, the team put together, in a better world than what we see them in our existence, because Bucky will end up being framed for T'Chaka's murder in 30 years and, kill Howard Stark in 3, so it's just nice seeing them at peace here. Peggy and Howard both know Bucky. Shoot, Howard knows Bucky when he kills him. They just know if that's actually him, that's not the Bucky they once knew. I knew that would be the case for Howard since he recognized him before he died, but it's nice seeing in this timeline, even though Steve is gone, within S.H.I.E.L.D., they heard Zola got one of their men and good friends and turned them into a sleeper agent. Wendy Lawson joins us in the traditional Kree star suit. I already explained her whole thing, so we don't need to get back into it again. Wendy calls Hank the crusty guy, which means to be annoying, like a crusty old man. Baby Quill made his way to Coney Island and, is just being a kid. Hank does the most triggering thing and stages an attack with his flying ants, attacking this child, and it's horrifying. He's jumping off the lights, breaking each bulb. This is just trigger warning, horrifying. More broken shards like the intro to What If when Baby Quill breaks the funhouse mirrors out of complete anger. Then Wendy Lawson mentions this.
Pull back, killer.
If the cube in that jet blows, there won't be a planet left to save.
Lawson used the Tesseract to study and create her lightspeed engine core in her ship. Later we see what happens when you shoot that engine core, you turn into Captain Marvel. Here she specifically says cube, which makes me think she just straight up has the Tesseract in that ship, and girl, if that's true in this universe, what are you doing? Goliath says problem child 10 o'clock, referring to the movie of the little redheaded demon child. I love that movie. When they try to escape, Quill uses his powers to keep the ship down. Luckily, Thor steps in and knocks him out. When he passes out, Baby Quill says,
I thought you were the dude from Van Halen.
And he's talking about young David Lee Roth with his fine self. So it looks like Ego and Quill have destroyed Jotunheim and Asgard in this reality, along with other 9 realms, and now they're coming to Earth. Jotunheim is also the place where the Frost Giants come from. They got my poor baby in the same cell they put Loki in the first Avengers movie. It's interesting because even then, they put him in that cage and Thor lectured everyone on the destruction Loki had already left behind. Like this scene right here. It's the same Avenger, it's just a different Avengers movie. On his way to Earth, Thor confiscated one of Ego's celestial seedlings, which Ego planted in 1980 Missouri behind the Dairy Queen. Essentially, Ego needs Peter as a battery. A single Celestial himself wasn't enough, but using Peter as a second, that would work. So he's the light for the fuse to pop off, if you will. But they can stop it only with another Celestial being because it's the only being that can penetrate the cosmic perimeter for the seedling. And the cutest cutaway. I actually no, because I Am Groot has some cute cutaways. This is the second cutest cutaway. Hope is singing Surrender by Corey Hart, a good hit. She's stolen her dad's keycard and is dancing around listening to her mom's Walkman. This scene made me want to cry, and it kinda did. She has a heart-to-heart with Peter, which of course they do. They're about the same age, and he misses his mom and his mom's Walkman, and they both share that feeling of losing their moms, and I love my mom. Baby Quill says this.
What's wrong with Missouri?
Missouri? My dad said you were an alien.
Dude, feed me a corn dog and call me Springsteen, because I was born in the USA. Why else do you think I'd fly 10,000 light years to get here? I'm just trying to get home.
And now it's obvious. He's E.T. We're E.T.ing this bad boy home. Also, he made a Born in the USA Bruce Springsteen reference. I gotta give him that. Hope shrinks down the cell with PIM particles, which isn't new. We've seen this done so many times, even shrinking their building down and carrying it like a suitcase. Because of the scene we've seen in the trailer, we should have known that this was just angry parents looking at a kid for getting in trouble. Howard says this.
Yeah, great. Blame the absentee father. I get that enough from my own son.
And they love blaming each other for each other's problems, but Howard is definitely in the wrong right here. Thor tries to leave immediately, which is common for him to do. He's very impatient in every movie he's in. He's just impatient in a very silly way. Ego then arrives on Earth to finish what Star-Lord started, and then King T'Chaka offers this.
There is an ancient Wakandan proverb: one only wins a two-front war by getting out of your enemy's way.
We don't know much of Wakanda before the meteor. We know from the first movie 5 tribes settled on it, called the nation Wakanda. We're hoping this is what we see in the new series, The Eyes of Wakanda. I just want them to kind of get into the before part, and maybe this will go and tie into that. The looks Wendy and Hank, and maybe I'm reading too into this, that they are giving each other, it's like he's hella flirting with her. And we know Janet and him, when they were apart, they hooked up with different people. Maybe he's just trying to get with Wendy. Thor imbues the power of lightning and jumps at Ego. It's all dramatic, but doesn't work when Ego uses his powers to build a giant boulder, smashing into Thor mid-air. When Ego began using his powers, the rocks start hovering around him like it did Peter in the second movie. We also see him literally becoming one with the planet and using the resources on the planet to his advantage. He pieces himself into a bigger rock version of himself when fighting adult Peter. He can speak through his rock rock duplicates as well, and he did that in the second movie when he's yelling at Peter. Thor spins and throws his hammer, crumbling a ton of rock people. We saw him smash through monsters like this in Ragnarok. The animation on that sand dust parting like the Red Seas for Mjolnir is incredible. We've never visited Quill's mom's grave, but this scene is very, very sweet, especially with Hank just having a hard time conveying his feelings up until the point about Janet being gone. Just a vulnerable moment while Howard is trying to make sure Bucky doesn't kill this child in the name of Soviet Russia. Howard hits a part of Bucky though in his feels, and Bucky pulls out. Ego is charging himself up to send tentacles of his electro powers. We saw him use this on adult Peter. Baby Quill and Hank jump onto the back of the flying ant. Quill yanks the seedling and his eyes start to brighten with the powers just holding it. Then Ego does it all over again. He admits to killing Peter's mom and caring only about the expansion, just like in the second movie. And Peter absorbs the seedling, taking more of Ego's powers. As one Celestial, that's okay, but two? That's better, and shoots all that power back at Ego, killing him and the Mound, but leaving him with his celestial powers, presumably. Quill 2, Ego 0 in 2 universes, baby! I'm gonna ignore what happened last episode at the Dairy Queen because I want to keep giving Quill 2 points. He also tells him, my mom calls me a Star-Lord, which in the end of the first Guardians movie, the note she left adult Peter ended with her giving him the nickname Star-Lord. And here comes the old Grinch Hank Pym to save the day. He has 2 kids now! They embrace and immediately Never Surrender by Corey Hart plays again, and everyone is enjoying a post-win dinner at Hank's house. This house isn't the new blue house that they have in Quantumania. This is 88. It's a different colored house. Then we have this little scene.
This American libation is surprisingly delicious. What do you call it?
Light beer?
How exotic! Another!
It's a callback to the first movie where he drank the drink he liked and he threw it on the ground, breaking it. Wendy did have Goose at this time, and it looks like she's offering him up to Hope and Peter, knowing damn well that thing's a monster. I love Goose though, and I love that they're making a cameo in What If. The Winter Soldier has slightly changed into a slightly normal Bucky. It was a change of his heart, which is good to know that that could change him. Goliath calls Thor Thunder Brother, and Hank calls him Goldilocks, which I think Tony has done before, but also Hawkeye does in the comics. Then we get the slow team walk up that the Guardians love doing so much. Our 80s Avengers are here and a little too powerful. Peggy Carter, King T'Chaka, Wendy Lawson, Goose, Star-Lord, Ant-Man, soon-to-be Wasp, soon-to-be dead Howard Stark, Thor, and Goliath. Such an incredible team. And Howard thought this Hands Across America shtick only worked on MTV. What an idiot. And that's it for my breakdown on episode 2 of What If Peter Quill Attacked Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lulu_Clemons. Follow New Rockstars. Subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.